Okay, we are staying in Scotland for our Football Club History series. Now, we're now looking at Clyde Football Club. Now, their current ground was actually not theirs. They are currently playing their home games at New Douglas Park, which is the home of Hamliton Academical. They've been there since 2022 on a ground sharing agreement. And we'll look at their stadium history in a bit. Now, the club itself is called Clyde for a reason. The River Clyde in Glasgow. Now, they were formed in 1877 in the Bridgerton area of Glasgow, which is a very industrial end of the city. And they've moved around a bit. They're currently not playing inside Glasgow. They haven't played a home game in Glasgow since 1991, when they were ground sharing with Partick Thistle. So they start off at the Barrowfield Park Stadium between 1877 and 1898. They then moved to the Shorefield Stadium in 1898, where they would remain until 1986, which then begins their ground sharing with Partick Thistle, which continues from 86 to 91. And then they make a momentous decision to move out of Glasgow into the Cumbernauld area of Lanarkshire, and they moved to the Broadwood Stadium between 1994 and 2022. But before they move there, after they leave Partick, they play for 3 seasons at Hamliton Academical's old ground, the old Douglas Park, between 91 and 94. Then they obviously moved to the Broadwood Stadium for a lengthy spell before going back to Hamilton and asking to ground share with them again. So they've been ground sharing with Hamilton twice, and that's why they end up playing at New Douglas Park. However, the ownership of Clyde have said they are looking at stadium future inside Glasgow city limits again. They are planning at some point in the future to move back inside the Glasgow city limits and potentially back to the Bridgerton area of Glasgow. We just do not know. They've got to find a suitable site, build a new stadium, or potentially, for example, ground share, for example, with Partick again, could be on the cards, considering they have done it before. So they don't actually own their home ground. The club itself has got some major silverware to their name. Yes, they've won the Scottish Cup on 3 separate occasions. Once before Second World War and twice since the Second World War. So they've also been a top-flight side on several occasions in their history. They're not a top-flight side at the moment, not by a long shot. So they first win the Scottish Cup in the 38-39 season, and then war breaks out. And league play eventually gets suspended by the British government, but they win that first Scottish Cup just before the Second World War. They win it twice in the 50s. They win it in the 54-55 season, and they win it for the third and final time in the 57-58 season. So they had a period in that time, just before and just after the Second World War, where they were quite a decent side. Imagine if war doesn't break out, could they have had more success? I've covered this in a lot of videos when we look at football club histories in both around the First World War and the Second World War periods, when players suspended, or a lot of their players, if they weren't in leagues where players suspended, go off to fight in conflict. Could the Second World War have potentially disrupted any further trophies that they could have won or competed for? I think absolutely. I think definitely the Second World War hindered their ability to win more silverware, although they did win after the Second World War. Obviously the stadium issue, where they've not had a permanent home ground for a lot of the recent history. They've moved around a lot. They've moved outside of Glasgow, which people could argue is a mistake, because they are the forgotten club of Glasgow. We've talked about all the other clubs apart from Celtic and Rangers. You've got Partick, you've got Queen of the South. They're the other club from Glasgow that everyone seems to forget is originally from Glasgow, because they haven't played a home game in Glasgow since the early 90s. They do have a lot of rivals, and a lot of their rivals are Glaswegian clubs. Obviously Celtic, Rangers, Partick and Queen's Park are the current clubs that play inside Glasgow that are still active. Obviously Third Lanark were a rival of Clyde Football Club. They went out of business some time ago. So the 4 other clubs in Glasgow are their big rivals, but they also have rivalries since moving out of Glasgow with Airdrieonians, Albion Rovers, Motherwell and Hamilton Academical. They have become rivals in more recent times because they've decided to move their home stadium, or where they were playing home games, outside of Glasgow, firstly at Broadwood but also at Douglas Park and New Douglas Park, which is in the Hamilton area. So they moved outside of Glasgow to play their home games, and that built some rivalries with other clubs from Lanarkshire. So there we go, there's a brief history of Clyde Football Club, the forgotten club of Glasgow, because they moved out of Glasgow is the best way to describe it. Although, as I say, there are plans in the pipeline to move back into the Glasgow city limits and either build a new stadium or potentially ground share with a club like Partick or Queen's Park, who are also building their own new stadium at some point in the future. But there we go, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on Clyde Football Club in the comments section below. And from me, for now, it's goodbye. I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.